Working in government in France during the long 19th century was challenging, to say the least. In 50 years, the country went from a monarchy to a republic to an empire to a monarchy, then to a different monarchy, and most of the time, working for the old regime was a great way to lose your career, maybe even your head. And yet there was one man who coasted through 6 regimes, a man, it seems, who never believed in anything. Not divine providence, not revolution, not equality, not conquest. He only believed in France. This episode is sponsored by Magellan TV, a streaming service made by filmmakers home to over 3,000 documentaries from all eras of history and beyond, like technology and nature and space. I like their stay-at-home travel guide collection. It's a great way to experience a mix of everything the service has to offer and forget about being stuck at home for a year. They're giving you, dear viewers, a special offer of 30 days subscription for the low price of $0 at MagellanTV.com/JackRackham, and I'll be back later with some actual history recommendations. Monsieur Charles Maurice de Talleyrand Périgord was born to an aristocratic house about as old as France itself, but it was never really a powerful house, and by the end of the 18th century, it certainly wasn't a rich one. His best option, if he wanted to change that, was to do what his dad did and join the army and climb up the ladder. But climbing was difficult for young Talleyrand, along with running and jumping. Anything to do with legs, really, because he was hit with a limp from childhood. So he decides to make some cash with his words and joins the clergy. He was a bright young pupil who spoke quite eloquently about the inalienable rights of the church, and so he got himself a bishopric and became an honorary member of the First Estate. And then he immediately backed off because it was becoming abundantly clear that the Third Estate was sick of everyone's shit and they were going to start alienating some rights. Talleyrand then drops his bishop hat and puts on his revolutionary beret. He rallies the people, crying, "Citizens, the time has come to nationalize the church and lay bare the inalienable rights of the people. The time has come to take back church property, of which I have conveniently recorded a meticulous itemized list during my time as a clergyman." And the revolutionaries have to agree, this guy's got some pretty good words, maybe even the best words. So he gets brought into the new government. He helps draft the Declaration of the Rights of Man. He's working to reform voting rights and securing loans and limiting money printing and advocating new regulation for police and what could possibly go, oh, right, him. Reign of Terror and all that, Paris devolves into a spiraling typhoon of revolutionary zealotry turned hysteria with no way back out, and Robespierre ordered everyone's heads cut off, including Talleyrand. But luckily for Talleyrand, he was stationed in the safest place a French politician could be at the time, London. He was over there trying to avoid war, like, please, just trust me, they'll get their act together. That didn't go so well, and then Britain kicks him out, so he's forced to couch surf with Aaron Burr for a little while until his friends in France manage to get him off the hit list. He gets a fancy new office as foreign minister, and then immediately causes a war with the United States because he wanted the Americans to pay to negotiate with him. But we pretend that never happened because just like every war since 1942, Congress didn't officially declare it to be a thing. All the while, Talleyrand's got his eyes on this up-and-coming General Bonaparte. Talleyrand starts writing him fan mail, and although they disagreed on some points, they end up becoming good friends. No, like actually just good friends. Napoleon ends up letting him in on a little secret that he's planning on overthrowing the government, and Talleyrand decides, you know what? I want a piece of that action. So with some fancy footwork I'll have to save for the Patreon commentary because it's kind of complicated, Napoleon ends up the most powerful man in France and transforming a consulship into an empire in record time. And then, oh boy, then he really starts popping off. So when Napoleon declared himself emperor, he modeled himself off of Charlemagne and included the title King of Italy. This angered everyone. But Napoleon had been planning for this ever since he sold Louisiana to the Yanks, and he created a navy to rival Britannia, at least when you also added Spain's navy. And unlike the last time Spain tried to invade England, this wasn't going to be decided by some freak weather. This would be a battle of epic proportions, a pivotal moment in world history that stood in the way of French dominion over all Europe. If you can't tell, this is where I'm bringing in Magellan TV. They've got a documentary, In Nelson's Footsteps, that tracks the life of the legendary Admiral Nelson, who led the British, and Trafalgar, the world's greatest naval battle that engulfs you in the fiery clash where he gave his life. Good stuff. All I can say in summary is that Britain won. hard, and that allowed them to be a thorn in Napoleon's side for the rest of his life, even when he won almost every battle he fought on the continent. Basically, Britain placed an embargo on France, and Napoleon said, "How can you embargo me when I control all of Europe?" And he turned half of Europe into French puppet states and bullied the other half into not trading with Britain anymore. I think it might be taken a little for granted in hindsight, but that's f***ing insane. No one had that kind of power since Charles V or Charlemagne. For Talleyrand, this meant life was good. Napoleon made him a Prince of Benevento, he's got several chateaus, and a celebrity chef at his beck and call. And he tells Napoleon, "Hey, now would be a great time to consolidate our gains. To peace in Europe, yeah? To peace and..." What is that? What? That right there! That is Portugal. They're like 1% of Europe. They're traitors. Napoleon, it's not worth it. Please don't. And so war breaks out in Portugal. And it keeps going and going and going, and the British have an army on the continent again, and there's Spanish rebels, and on the other side of Europe, Russia's trading with Britain again, and Napoleon goes charging in over there, but they've dealt with this before. Napoleon can take Moscow if he wants, but there won't be much left by the time he gets there. Talleyrand is starting to see the writing on the wall, and the last thing he wants is for France to get Versailles once this whole thing is over. So he starts sending some postcards. Maybe, for instance, he had some secrets that Austria or Russia might be able to get some use out of. And when the Allies converge on Paris, they find themselves negotiating not with Napoleon, but with a provisional government supported by the Senate. The Tsar of Russia explains, "Look, we don't hate France, we just really need to get rid of Napoleon. Just hand him over, and we'll go back to before the revolution and pretend you didn't drag the continent into war for 20 years. What do you say, Mr. President?" I dig it. Napoleon's carted away to Arkham, otherwise known as Elba, and Talleyrand is left to pick up the pieces. The Allies bring back the old monarchy, but with a constitution this time, and they still really want to punish France for declaring war on most of Europe 6 times, but Talleyrand takes to the stand to defend his country, pointing out, "My dear friends, I think it is safe to say you owe me one. Russia, who was there for you when you wanted out of the embargo? Prussia, who gave you a shoulder to cry on when half your land was taken? By you? Look, we might deserve to be punished, but look what happened when one country got too much power. If you cripple France, then Britain would get too much power, and I think I speak for everyone here when I say we do not want that. To peace in Europe! To peace in Europe! Napoleon has escaped Arkham and taken over France! Waterloo ended up sorting things out, and Napoleon was sent to St. Helena, where he was never heard from again, but the next treaty was a little less lenient, and sure enough, the 19th century belonged to Britain, albeit not in a take over the entire continent kind of way. Talleyrand went into a sort of soft retirement, funding a very pro-Orleanist newspaper, and then the House of Orleans actually took over the monarchy, and so it fell to Talleyrand to explain to Britain, no, just because they're monarchs who took over power during a revolution does not mean that there's going to be another Napoleon. Unfortunately, he died in 1838, just 10 years before France was taken over by another Napoleon.